Well, this is great. Welcome back to the Fire You Carry podcast. We have an esteemed guest. I'm very excited about this. Alan Trammell, this is a pleasure. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Well, it's my pleasure, Kevin, and happy holidays to you and your family. It's amazing, especially when you get older. How time flies, and if I'm not mistaken, a couple days from now, we'll be turning the calendar, and it'll be 2026. So, hope that you've had a good holiday season. I know I have. I'm looking forward to watching a few of the bowl games coming up as we
Yes.
do on New Year's and all the different college football. NFL, all that good stuff. But I'm a sports nut, so
Well, you
go ahead,
have to
ask
be.
me whatever you'd like.
I love it. Well, if anyone doesn't know, I would love to have them give you a little bit of background. I can give you a quick synopsis. You're a major league Hall of Famer, a Detroit legend, and I think a couple of things that stood out to me is a 20-year career all with Detroit, which is unbelievable. And obviously, you won the World Series in '84. But I would wanted to kind of see if you can give a little bit of background of who you, even maybe for some of the younger guys. But I know I brought up your name this morning at the table at the fire station, and I had two of the captains going, "No way, you're talking to Tram? That's amazing!" So I'd love for maybe if you can give a little bit a quick background of
Well, sure. First of all, I'm from San Diego. I was born in Orange County, but I moved to San Diego when I was just a little boy, and that's really all I remember. And growing up on the West Coast is obviously for sports. Being able to be outside year round was very conducive to somebody that was very had a lot of energy, very active, and sports has always been my first love. So whatever sport was in season was my favorite sport. First and foremost was baseball, but I played everything that was under the sun. Again, just to get outside, get out of the house, and just be with the buddies. Things were a little different back, 50, 60 years ago when I was growing up. And, again, we just did a lot of things on our own. And obviously, we did have some good coaching, but again, I played them all. Um, and when I got into high school, it was baseball and basketball. Those were the two sports that I played. Most people at that time in high school thought I was a better basketball player, and that's a compliment. I was a
oh really?
pretty good high school basketball player, but so were a lot of high school players. I wasn't big enough, and I wasn't quite good enough. I could have went to a smaller school somewhere, but I did well in high school. The Detroit Tigers and drafted me, and I was going to go to UCLA. I had signed a letter of intent to go to UCLA
Ooh,
to play basketball, not not basketball. Excuse me, baseball, not basketball. Even though at that time, that was John
oh, the
Wooden's era.
Wooden, yeah, that would be the
I
Wooden
might be
era.
outdating myself, but UCLA was a dynasty back in those days. But I was going to go to UCLA to play baseball, but I got drafted by the Tigers, and things were quite different back in that's 50 years ago basically. That the publications, they didn't have all the publications. I knew I was going to get drafted, but I didn't realize I was going to get drafted as high as I did. So I was drafted in the second round. First thing that came to mind was, hey, they must like me. And obviously I did want to play professional baseball. And so when they Tigers drafted me in the second round, I figured, let's give it a shot. I didn't have to convince my parents. They knew that I really wanted to play, so I ended up signing, and off I went. First stop was Bristol, Virginia, which was quite different than growing up in San Diego on the West Coast. But that's how it all started. But again, the things, and I guess my point that I was trying to make is that things are a lot different. Everything's you kind of know what you're getting into now. 50 years ago, it was a lot of unknown. I
Well,
signed a contract.
yeah,
I went to
this
Bristol,
is wild
Virginia.
to me.
They gave me 3 days to find a place to stay. I'm thinking, I don't have a pillow. I got a few clothes. Who's going to cook? No mom around. Uh, but here we go. They just kind of throw you into the fire. But, I was able to adapt, got in with a college guy who did the cooking and, kind of started my professional career. And lo and behold, it ended up going very quickly in the minor leagues and making up to the major leagues at a young age.
Yeah, I gotta ask you, this is wild to me because I think of you had to be 17, 18 years old
Yep.
at the time. And I mean,
I was
obviously you
18
had to
years
have,
old. Yep, I was 18 years old when I signed.
and when you
So
when you're getting, I mean, it's a different time, but were you getting scouts? Were you getting looks in high school? Was there any inkling that that was? I know you said you had an inkling you might have gotten drafted, but
well, I mean, I did have an inclination, but again, like today, you almost kind of know in within a 4 or 5 round period whether or not where you're going to go.
sure,
And like I said, I didn't know if I was going to be drafted in the 20th round. I saw scouts there. I knew. I talked to my high school coach, and had several conversations about, okay, you're going to get drafted. But obviously, back in those days, and even today, going to school is very important. And so, I
sure,
wanted to further my education, and what they tell you then, like they do now, have something to fall back on, which is what I was going to do. But again, just the fact that drafted as high as I was, and at that time, again, this is going back 50 years. There was only 24 major league teams. Now there's
mm,
30. Okay, so they've added 6 teams since then. So there was only 24 picks in the first round. There was no compensation pick. So then you just flip the clock, and 25 went back at that 1976, the year I was drafted. The Houston Astros had the number 1 pick, and the Tigers had the second pick. So I'm around the second round. 25 went to the Houston. 26 Tigers were on the clock, and they selected me. And so that's where the point was, is that, that's the 26th player taken in the country, you know, they must
it's
like me.
amazing.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm in. I'm in. I mean, this is again my goal. And so we ended up doing that. But lo and behold, and it was such an eye opener. Professional baseball, so different than high school, obviously, and
Of
then even
course, you're a
college,
grown
to be
man.
honest
Yeah,
with you. I mean, it's getting thrown into the fire. You're playing with the big boys, and you're playing, as a job, basically 7 days a week. So it was quite an adjustment. But lo and behold, I was able to make enough adjustments along the way, and move up fast. And just one other point about with the Tigers. So again, when the first pick in the country means they had the worst record. Tigers, second best, worst record. We weren't very good at that time. The
mm,
Tigers weren't that good. So, you got your foot in the door, myself and quite a few others. And that was the opportunity that we took advantage of at that particular time. And we were able to do well in a short period of time. And they moved a bunch of us up quickly. And, I actually got to the major leagues when I was 19 years old.
that's incredible. And I read that you bypassed the AAA. It was kind of a quick promotion.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
wanted to. What was the feeling like at 19 years old? I mean, you're getting your shot at the big leagues, where I'm sure guys have spent
Nervous.
a lifetime dreaming of this, right?
Well, here's where part of this story, and it needs to be told because I'm very proud of 20 years with the Detroit Tigers organization, the only team that I played with. I've done other things with other organizations as far as coaching and stuff, but as a player, it was strictly the Tigers. But I played with a gentleman by the name of Lou Whitaker, who was my second baseman, and out of
Sure,
the 20, we played together 19 years together. And so when I got into the minor leagues, Lou was drafted the year before. Um, but when we went to the instruction league in 1976, we hooked up in Florida, and Lou had been the Florida State MVP in 1976, playing for a manager by the name of Jim Leland, who is in the Hall of Fame as well.
sure, sure.
And
Yeah,
so Jim had Lou. I hadn't met either one of these, but when we went to the instructional, Jim was one of our coaches. Lou was the Florida State MVP, as I mentioned, as a third baseman. As soon as we got together, I met Lou. They go, Lou, you're going to move to second, and you're going to team with this guy over here, which is me. And my God, that was the smartest move that the Tigers could have made. And Lou, to his credit, again, I've said 3 times now, he was the Florida State MVP as a third baseman. He goes to the instructional league, doesn't say boo, doesn't complain one bit. And that just tells you a little bit about
sure.
my partner, Lou Whitaker. And, lo and behold, we get together, we start working together. And we went to double A the very next year after the instructional league. We went to the big leagues after that in September. We played our first big league game the same day. We both got our hits the first time up off the same
Wow.
pitcher. And the incredible story about Lou and Tram playing all those years together. And he should be in the Hall of Fame with me. And I'll tell you, it it just gives me an uneasy feeling when Lou's name is brought up, and he gets credit, but he doesn't get the credit that he deserves. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer, and again, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, if anybody's listening out there, let's get Lou in the Hall of Fame. Let's go.
Absolutely.
What an amazing thing, though. I there's something I don't know if you can speak to the fuel of having a partner that pushes you in a great way, but I love that mindset of saying we're just gonna in the fire service. There's a term we call adapt and overcome. We go in environments and you can train and you can practice all you want, but it's an unknown environment and you have to adapt on the fly. And when somebody says, "Hey, you got a shot, but you got to move from third to second base or whatever it may be," I just love that dynamic of saying, "No problem, coach," or whatever it is, and whatever you need, and then being able to adapt. I think so many people are so specific now that it's harder to adapt. But I love that mindset.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And we were Lou's from Martinsville, Virginia. I'm from San Diego, California. We're from different parts of the country, but he had some very good coaching through his youth baseball, as I did. And then when we got into professional, we kind of just carried on. We had been taught well, and we were all about the team and winning. And again, it's I know it's a cliche and all, but we bought into that. And then a few years later, we get to play for a gentleman by the name of Sparky Anderson, who's
Wow,
also in
the
the Hall of
legend,
Fame.
yeah.
And that was the right guy for us and others on our Tiger Ball Club. But Lou and I coming up together again, it was just all about uh, winning, playing good team baseball. That's how we were brought up from going back to our little league days and having a partner. So, you can look at, was there competition between Lou and I? And really, there really wasn't. I mean, we were brought up together, and we knew that they liked us. But there's two things: people might like you and giving you an opportunity, but then you've got to do the job. You got to do the
Yes, right.
job. You got to,
You
you
got
got
to
to put some
perform.
numbers on the board, and you got to, we're playing again. We're playing. This is our job. But again, we leaned on each other quite a bit, and so I was brought up again, as I said, 19. Lou was 20, so we're 1 year apart. So we're basically the same. And he was learning a new position, but I felt I was kind of the captain as a shortstop. That was just kind of how it was, like a point guard. You kind of I took that upon myself as a leader on the ball club, and just that's just kind of how I was wired. And not that Lou wasn't the leader, but I was a little more vocal. Lou wasn't, but we learned the game of baseball the same. And again, I'm so proud of playing with the same double play combination for 19 years. It's actually
That's
by
amazing. I don't
far
think
the
that will
longest
ever.
running double play combination in the history of baseball by
It
about
has to,
7 years. Yeah.
and the way that the MLB is set up now with the way the business works, I don't think that might be ever be
You know,
duplicated again.
I hope not, but you know what? If it doesn't, our names will be brought up. But never say never, I guess is my
Yeah,
point. But highly unlikely, especially as you just mentioned how the game is, and really how all sports, and it's not always the player's fault nowadays. The way a player would like to stay with a club, sometimes it just doesn't work out. And in the history of sports, there's only a few in all the sports that get to play for a long period of time, 15 to 20 years with the same club. It just doesn't happen. And it's
it
always
doesn't
been that way.
happen.
If you look it up in the books, very few athletes get to play with one club their whole career. And Lou and I both did it with the Detroit Tigers.
That's incredible.
It is a great story. That's another reason why he should
it's
be in there,
incredible.
and his numbers are so
Yeah.
good. I mean, uh,
Now, did you have?
I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get, I don't want to
Yeah,
throw any bad
put
words out
Lou in
there,
the
but it's a,
hall.
it's a
Yeah,
shame. It's a shame, and he should
yeah.
be. He will be, but I just hope it's sooner than later.
No, I'm imagining myself as a 19-year-old. I barely know anything. I think I was a server at a restaurant at the time going through college, but I had no idea about. Was there a giant learning curve on the business side of like saying, okay, they want to sign contracts. They want to tell me. I mean, was that a hard thing to navigate as a 19-year-old? Or did you have to get an agent and get help to say, get
Well,
advice to say, what do I do now? This is my job now. Yeah,
yeah, it is. Again, it was just something that I always wanted to do. But back, again, this is going way back, that, we had the Players Association, but it was still at the early stages, and free agency was just starting. So the business side was, we basically got what they gave us,
got it.
and I
Yeah,
was
there's
happy
not
to
a.
take it. I was happy
Yeah,
to
of
take it.
course,
I just wanted to play baseball, and I
of
knew that if
course.
I played, a few years, that I would be rewarded, which I was. And the same
That's
thing with
great.
Lou, but and others. I mean, we had four guys on our as rookies, and again, this is kind of outdating, but if you wanted to Google, you look at Lou and myself, Jack Morris, who's in the Hall of Fame, and Lance Pierce, our
Pitcher.
catcher. That's four
Wow.
guys up the middle: a pitcher, a catcher, and a second baseman and shortstop. We were a big nucleus of our team, and that's how the Tigers at that particular time, they were hoping when they drafted all of us, obviously every team's trying to do the same thing, but up the middle, strong up the middle, and we were, and so they did a pretty good job of drafting. So Lance was a number one pick in 1974, a catcher. Lou was a fourth round pick in 1975. And Jack Morris and I were drafted out of the same draft in 1976. Jack was a fifth rounder,
Wow.
and I was a second rounder. So again, that's how teams are doing it today. That's what they're hoping for. But unfortunately, the draft doesn't always work out the way you'd like to, especially in baseball. It's really hard.
No.
uh,
I mean,
it's
that's
harder
like the
than some of
early.
the other sports for them to hit
It's
on all those, the early rounders.
no, and it sounds like that. It's almost early before Moneyball was a thing or
Yeah,
statistics or
well,
that.
it was.
Right.
Yeah, it,
Yeah.
it was. And again, those are just kind of the facts. And got into my career, obviously I was compensated. We actually had a couple of lockouts, slash strikes that I was involved with, where, which weren't easy. We missed some time. And, unfortunately, trying to get ahead of ourselves, but the basic agreement for the players expires at the end of the 2026 season, which is coming up, and there's
Mm.
already rumors about things that possibly could happen. I hope not. I mean,
Yeah.
I've always said, and I'll say it again, there's enough for everyone. But
Yes.
obviously, you get into these negotiations, it's not quite that easy. It's not that.
Well, one of the things I wanted to pick your brain about, which I loved, it seemed at the time that you weren't the biggest, the strongest, the fastest. It
Yeah,
seemed like you were a fundamentals guy, but I wanted to hear about maybe your work ethic or your process of staying in shape and honing your craft. You know, as a guy who wasn't like prototypical, I'm thinking of the Barry Bonds type or that guy who just
yeah.
looks like he can smash the ball. How did you use that? That to your advantage, or how was your preparation or your
Yeah.
physicality as
Well,
you're
that's
going
it's
through?
well said, and that's the reason why that I played as long as I did, and that the reason why I believe that I'm in the Hall of Fame is, again, looking back on the consistency day in and day out. It wasn't flashy. That wasn't my style. I couldn't play that way. But over a long period of time, and you add it all up, you go, oh, that guy was pretty good, and that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be good at everything that I did. Maybe not great,
Mm,
but good. And so I took a lot of pride, as somebody that, again, had a lot of energy. I wasn't big, so when I signed, I was 165 pounds, 6 foot, 165 pounds. Well, that's not very big. And to be honest with you, if I was playing in today's game, they wouldn't have. And same with Lou, because he was actually less. He weighed less than I did.
wow.
But we were wiry, and we did get some strength in a few years. But we were just boys amongst men. But we were able to hold our own. But it was the dedication. It's the structure. It's the things that you know all about being a fireman and somebody that is protecting people. That there's certain things that you need to do, and we bought in. I bought in. Even when I was younger, I didn't realize kind of how I went about my business. But I do look back, and I was always that way. I was always very structured about, not making mistakes, being very diligent about how I went about my business. And I was always, again, because I was smaller, I was active. I didn't mind running. I didn't
Mm,
mind. I wasn't running miles and miles, but I was always moving. And so in the off season, even before, they had all these workouts, I was coming home in the off season. I was running on my own. I was hitting. I was taking my ground balls. We didn't do a lot of weight training yet. That still wasn't really part of Major League Baseball at that particular time. But I was fortunate living in San Diego that I got wind of some of the Padres that stayed in here in San Diego. They would go down to the stadium, and their trainer, they didn't have strength and conditioning guys, but their trainer put them through a program that I heard of, and I got wind of it, and the Tigers allowed me to go and work out there, and I did that for
Oh,
so
cool.
many years. That's where I started doing some weight training in the off season. And I started, obviously I was getting a little bit older. I started to put on a few more pounds, start to feel more comfortable about playing in the big leagues. Those kinds of things. It's just maturing. I'm starting to become a man. So it all kind of tied in, and I was able to hold my own again in the major leagues, get a little bit stronger. And then after about, 2 to 3 years in the major leagues, I started to feel like I belonged. And that's really kind of
Oh.
when things started to kind of take off a little bit.
Yeah, it's a fascinating sport to me because I think of it as a game of failure, right? Like as
Oh,
you're
it is. Yeah.
extremely successful batting 350, right? And extremely successful. And that means you're failing 7 out of 10 times, right? Or close to it. And I wanted
Right.
to see how you keep, because it would seem to me that at that level you're at risk of always being cut or being put on the bench or being traded, and maybe keeping your mindset if you had a slump, or if you had how did you keep your mind positive to say
Well,
I'm gonna get through this?
I had some slumps like everybody in baseball. Baseball is a very humbling game for everybody, regardless of how good you are. You're going to go through stretches. Obviously, the better ones don't go through as many, but you're going to. When you play 162 games, that is so many that it's the game's going to get you at some point. So again, going back to the era that I was in, it was always as a shortstop, defense first. And so when I
Mm.
became, a professional, I remember the scout signing me, and he goes, "Tram, if you hit 250 and play good defense, you'll play in the major leagues a long time." And I'm going, "Man, I just came out of high school, hit like 450." I'm like, you know what? Well, little did I know that when I signed professionally, I started to really quickly realize the competition was night and day. Okay.
Sure.
But to my credit, I guess, looking back, I didn't realize that I was just trying to survive basically. But I started to realize, like, what's my best chance to succeed? And I use that same line to our players because I still work, with the Tigers. I'm a special assistant. I rove around and I do a lot of things with the organization, but mostly is working with our young players. But I tell them the same thing about what's your best chance to succeed. And at that time, I was like, okay, well, these guys are doing this and they're that. They're throwing harder. They're throwing better breaking balls. I'm like, how am I going to make? How am I going to make this? But I was just so determined that I was going to survive and do whatever. So I made some adjustments. Even though I was a high school kid, I was just competition isn't quite that good. I was able to make needed adjustments quicker than probably most. And I think
Mm.
that was the thing that I did a little better than maybe some of the other. They didn't recognize that because again, there's so many kids from not just California, but Texas and Florida and Ohio and Michigan, wherever. There's good players everywhere. And you're teaming up with all different people from all over the, United States and other countries.
Oh,
And now
yeah,
you're
now
trying to
it's
play a game
worldwide,
like,
right?
whoa, this is pretty good. So again, I started to figure things out again a little bit quicker to, just to be able to survive. I didn't hit for much power, but I was always able to put the bat on the ball. And as I mentioned first and foremost, I was always able to catch the ball and throw it accurately. That was always my calling card. And so as things evolved and I was able to get that bat going a little bit better, I always did okay. But again, I got better. And those are the things that the Tigers were looking at is like, and the same thing with Lou. We didn't hit much power, but as we got a few years under our belt, we started to kind of establish ourselves, pop a few more balls, and we were never really considered power hitters, but we could drive the ball and do the different things that we needed to do to help our ball club.
That's amazing. Well, I'd love to fast forward to the '84 World Series where you did hit the ball.
Yeah.
I think you had what,
Oh,
2 home runs?
good times. Good times.
Yeah, so that had to be pretty cool because I think it was against your hometown Padres, right? That
It
you guys were
was.
going against.
Yep.
And
Going against
even
my
though you weren't
hometown
a power
team,
hitter,
man.
I
I
think
I
you
had
got the
went. I'd been a vendor at the stadium. I was a vendor when the Aztecs and the Chargers. Uh, I did a few games for the Padres, but again, back in the day, when I was in junior high school and going into high school, pods didn't draw very well, and so I was a low
sure.
man on the totem pole. So I'd get in with my little vending card and go watch the games, but oftentimes I didn't get a chance because they didn't need me. But nevertheless, this was all start of the dream that started with myself. But again, going to the '84, most baseball people and being in Detroit, more of a traditional team, you know, um, Padres ended up beating the Cubs, but they were down two nothing, 2 games to none to the Padres were down. And most people wanted to see the Cubs and the Tigers, classic
Sure.
older teams, traditional teams. There was one guy that was me that wanted to go to San Diego. I wanted to go home, which ended up being the case. The Cubs had to go to San Diego, and Padres got them 3 games in a row. And so we actually opened the World Series in San Diego, and just like that dream year, we started off 35-5, which is the best 40-game start in baseball history. It's like Nintendo. I'm talking to you,
Right.
Kevin, right now about it, and I'm like, we started the season 35-5. How did we do that? I mean, everything went our way. Everybody was contributing. It was just something you couldn't have scripted any better. But so fast forward it, obviously we tailed off some after that 35-5 start, but we went wire to wire. We swept the Kansas City Royals in the playoffs, 3 games to none. We go into the World Series again. There wasn't all the playoff rounds, things like that, and we got a chance to play in a World Series right in my and I got to sleep in my own bed. I didn't even stay with a team in the hotel. I stayed in my own home, which
No
was very
kidding.
comforting. And then we jumped out like we did oftentimes that year. Lou led off the game with a double. He led off. I hit second. First pitch, I got a base hit. We're up 1-0 in the first game of the World Series after three
Let's
pitches.
go.
It was just one of those things. So it was just a dream year. I was swinging the bat very well in the playoffs, and then in carrying on into the World Series. And again, it was the highlight of my career of winning the
Well,
World
you
Series.
had 2 home runs in that series or in one
Yeah,
game, right? Or is it
I did. So game four, so we won the first game, and then the Padres beat us game two. So we go back to Detroit, and it's 1 game apiece. And the way the series were, it was 2-3-2. So we had the
2,
next
3?
3 games at Detroit, and if we didn't sweep them, we were going to have to go back to San Diego and at least play a game or possibly two. And so game three, we beat them. Padres, they were hanging on. We beat them, but they were obviously they were in the World Series for a reason. So they kept hanging around. We'd jump out to a lead, they would stay right with it. They come back. But in Game Four, and I hit two-run homers, and we won
Oh,
four to
wow.
two. And so those home runs obviously meant a lot because those were the only runs we got. So Lou led off the bottom of the first with a base hit. I had a 2-run homer. In the third inning, the same thing. Lou gets on base. I hit a 2-run homer. We end up winning the game 4-2. Jack Morris, who had pitched game one, also pitched game four. He threw 2 complete games. Um, you know, game five, Gibby hits 2 home runs, one off of Goose Gossage.
That's the
Uh,
great Kurt Gibson, if you
yeah,
guys
the
don't know.
old
Yeah.
jumping up and down, and old Gibby, has that
Well,
flair
we're
for
Dodgers guys
dramatic.
out here,
He
so
did
yeah.
something like that for the Dodgers off of Eckersley as well. But Gibby was a great player as well. We had a really good team. Again, it all just came together. But Jack and Gibby could have easily have been named the MVP of that series. They gave it to me. I'm happy to. But we were just happy. I'm not wearing the ring right now. It's in a safety deposit box, but I'm going to show you right where it would go right here. And we wore it proudly and still do when I take it out of the safety deposit box.
What an
And
amazing
that's what you
it's
play
an
for. You play to win
that's it.
championships.
That's what every boy dreams of, and I don't know if there's anything more special. I mean, I watched the videos of you jacking 2 home runs in that game
Yeah.
and just watching the Detroit crowd just go ballistic. And I don't know if there's I can imagine. I've never been close to that, but imagine that there's probably no better feeling in sports than hitting one out of the park like that in the
Oh,
World
it
Series.
felt pretty darn good, to be honest with you. But um, you know, just just winning again, that was first and foremost. To be able to contribute, which at that time already I had, like 6 years under my belt already, so I was a little bit of a seasoned vet, like a lot of our guys. A lot of guys came up. I was the youngest at 19, but we had guys. Lou, I mentioned, was 20 when he first came to the big leagues. Others were in their early 20s. And so we got a chance to play together for a few years. And I mentioned Sparky before, but they had brought Sparky in after our first year in the major leagues. And he had come over from the Big Red Machine in Cincinnati, where they had
Yeah.
won back-to-back world championships in '75 and '76. And some argue that from top to bottom, their offensive lineup was as good as there was in the history of baseball. And so Sparky comes over to the Tigers, man, and I was a little bit in awe of him, knowing what he had accomplished with the Reds. And we thought we were pretty good, and we were, but we needed some direction, and that's where Sparky came in. And
Mm.
I'll be the first to toot his horn. He was my mentor, number one guy. There's others, but Sparky was at the top of the list that showed us how to do it, not only on the field but off the field. And
Mm.
I'm proud to have said that Lou and I played together because we were together the whole time. We played for Sparky for 17 years, which
Wow.
again, there's been a couple guys that have played with a manager a little longer, but not many, not many. We played for him for all those years, and he taught us how to play. He taught us how to do things and make better players out of ourselves. Again, also as better people, better as a better person. And I'm sure you can relate to that because that's what your business, I know that you guys protect and serve, but you guys have
Oh,
a lot
we're
of structure, and that's what we believed in as ourselves. And that's really when you asked me the question a while ago about, what made me go, the consistency, the structure. That again, it started with my parents and coaches, and then when I got into professional baseball, Sparky and some of the other coaches that I had were basically extensions of my parents. They were tough. There was tough love. That was the era that it wasn't. We got yelled and scolded and stuff, but that was just how it was. It was a tough love, and I'm very
well.
appreciative
I think
of
there's
that.
something
I
missing
really,
about that.
I believe in that. I think there's a lot to be said, and I know that helped me.
Yeah, I think we're missing a little bit of that. I think very
Well, I
similar in
agree.
the fire service.
Yep.
There's a lot of tough love. It's either, but it's mandatory because somebody's life is on the line,
Well,
and if
there's
you
a
don't do your
difference. You're saving lives.
but
We're
not
trying to
only
have
ours,
people that are enjoying, but go
yeah.
ahead. I want you to finish with that
No, but we live
comment.
together. We live together, and so I think there's a formal education and mentorship from your parents and your family members when you're young, and then when you get into our career field, there you're again a young man living with grown men, and we live there 50% of the
Sure,
time. So
sure.
it's not just about performing at your job, but it's like you said with Sparky. It's like, are you the first to take the trash out? Did you clean up after
Right.
yourself? And some of that tough love I think is missing a little bit because I think that's what we all need to kind of fuel each other, get you better. You're around great men, and I think there's something to that what you do in the little things you do in the big things, and that's what they really preach in the fire service, and I'm sure that's got to be the same in baseball.
No, it's exactly. And you said, well, some people would say, they could be listening and say, well, what does that really mean, or how does that matter? It's again, it does matter. Again, if you're willing to take shortcuts, there's sacrifices that are made in
Mm,
every business, every profession, and those are the kinds of things that those are your teammates, your guys that you're staying with and living with, and then going out there and protecting. That means a lot. And if you just let's ad lib it today and let's see if that works. That's not going to work. Well, I know one thing. If I tried to ad lib it and just kind of just it's okay. We lost today. It doesn't matter. No, somebody else would take my job, and I didn't
yeah,
want somebody to take my job. I wanted to play a long period of time, which is I ended up doing that. But it was basically because of what we were just talking about. It
sure.
mattered to me each and every year. If I had a good game today, I would try to do it again tomorrow. If I didn't play well, and I'm going to say something else, we have to learn how to flush it, turn the page, like a closer mentality. Learn how to
Mm,
put that behind, even though that's tough sometimes. you care. When somebody beats you or you don't perform up to your standards, it hurts and it should hurt. But that's what kind of fuels the fire. And that's what I did for, a long, long period of time, longer than most. And I know that that does work. And so that's my
I
story, and I'm
love it.
sticking to it. Even though I'm not playing anymore, I'm still involved in the game, which I'm happy to do. They still include me. And again, some of those messages I'm telling our guys today. And
Oh,
I
you'd have
played it,
to.
30 years.
Yeah, I love the fact you bring up him as a Sparky as a mentor because I think I think it was post what I was reading, you winning the MVP, having the World Series ring. I think it was the following season. He said that you were batting fourth instead of second. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, it was a couple years. So we won in 84 and going into our 87, 1987, we came into spring training and this was a time we had lost our catcher, Lance Parrish, and he was our cleanup hitter. And so I hit second, Lou, myself, Kirk Gibson, Lance Parrish, Darrell Evans, Chet Lemon. And it would just, go on. And we had a very good lineup. Could do a lot of things and play the game correctly. So when Lance left, um, he felt like he wanted me to move from second to fourth. And I went, "You're crazy, Sparky."
I'm not a
I said,
cleanup
"I'm
guy.
not a
Yeah,
cleanup hitter. I loved hitting number two, to be honest with you, because at that time, we hit and ran, we bunted, we did those little things. Those are the little things that I could do, and so I could contribute to help our ball club. And when he moved me, I'm like, man, I don't see it. But the good thing about this that he did it from the first day of spring training. So I played, a month of spring training of kind of getting a feel. And he goes, Tram, I don't want you to change anything. I want you to be yourself. I just want you to play the game according to the situation. And so I didn't really understand what that meant until I started to learn that as the four hitter, so you're three, four, and five guys. So when Lou and I are first and second, I'm going back and forth. Our job is to get on base for the three, four, and five guys.
yeah,
Okay. Well, now I was now in that situation where the guys at the top of the lineup were getting on base, and it was my job to drive those guys in. That was the biggest thing. And the other part he had mentioned is that, Tram, you're going to have to learn how to hit 3-0. And I'm like, because normally when I hit, when I was 3-0, a lot of times at hitting first or second with Lou, sometimes we'd have to take because
yeah.
we were trying to get on base. And that's just, again, how the game was played. It's different now, but that's how it was. So again, going back to the cleanup spot, I started to learn, and he goes, "You're going to have to let it go, especially with two outs, because the guy, if he throws you a cookie, you got to be able to put a good swing on that. You might be able to hit a ball out of the ballpark or drive it. And you don't want to do that and have the count start 0-0-0-0 with the next guy. It's to
Right.
your advantage." And I'm like, so I started to have a little success. I had to force myself to learn how to do that. But I did have a few home runs hitting 3-0. I'm like, whoa, okay. So again, what what leads to this is the confidence. So some success leads to confidence. And it was by far the best year statistically that I had by far. And
Yeah,
that
it was 350 or
Sparky
so, right?
getting
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
in the cleanup spot. When you look at me, I was still probably 175 to 180. But I had a little pop, and I was learning how to, head of the count. I was learning how to get, the head of the bat out and start to drive the ball a little bit more. And lo and behold, man, that Sparky knew what he was doing, like he did a lot of times. I give him all the credit in the world because I wouldn't have put myself at four, but he did, and I hit there for a few years. Again, I wasn't the prototype four hitter, but I did a pretty good job, and I understood how to do what he wanted me to do. So
that's pretty amazing. Yeah, I love. There's probably no coincidence that he's in the hall. When
yeah,
you can see something in you that
he
you can't see
managed
something in
he
yourself.
managed the big red machine. Johnny Bench and Joe Morgan and Tony Perez, and unfortunately with Pete Rose, and he's no longer with us, but we all know
Right.
that Pete Rose statistically was a Hall of Famer.
Oh, he's
And
amazing.
all
Yeah.
that. But he had a great team. But people say, "Oh, manager, he just writes out the lineup card." Believe me, being that I was there for so many years, manager does a lot more than just write out the lineup card. He has to
Mm.
handle, put out fires. He's the captain of the ship.
Now, I'd love to see. So, I mean, obviously, you had some success early on, and what an amazing thing with Lou and what you guys have developed. When did you meet your wife Barbara along this journey? How did that, or
Yeah.
did you always know her?
Well, we're the same. We're the same year. We're the same grade. We're the same age. We graduated in 1976, and so I met Barb when she, in high school. So
Oh wow!
Kearney is was 10 through 12, not 9 through 12 at that particular time. I'm not sure why, but the city schools in San Diego were only three grades. So I didn't know her. We went to two different junior highs, but the two junior highs went to Kearney, and that's where I met her. And we didn't really start dating until really the latter part of my senior year. But we're together still. It's 47 years, almost 48 years
Wow!
coming up. So she's been through all of this.
Now,
And again, like,
so when did you get married, or how long into your career did you guys?
well, actually, so I signed in 76, played my first major league game in September of 79 or 77, excuse me. We got married in February of 78. So played my first major
Wow!
league game in September of 77. So just a few months later, her birthday's a couple weeks behind me. I got married. We got married. We got married on my birthday.
Wow!
And then her she turned 20. It was my 20th birthday. She turned 20 a few weeks later, and again, the rest is history. Three
Unbelievable.
beautiful
Now,
kids. Uh,
were you splitting time? Did she travel with you on the road early on, or did
um,
you have a house in San Diego and you lived in Detroit? How did that work?
we actually bought a home in Michigan before we bought a home in San Diego. But for most of my career, we had homes in both places, and then
Gotcha.
we started our family, in the early 1980s. And so during the summer, I'm playing baseball and it's not, that's when we're busy.
Yeah.
So she would take the kids and go to northern Michigan. She would go home to San Diego and spend a few weeks out there. And she was raising the kids for the most part. I mean, dad was around, but not around as much as he would have liked. But obviously, that's the profession you're in. And she was the one that was able to do all of those things and raise those children, even though they're adults now. But she gets all the credit. And but again, yeah, we've been married for many years, and it's not easy again in professional sports, really in any profession. Um, and we know what the numbers say about marriages. So we're fortunate that it works for us, and it's
That's it.
still
Well,
working.
and you have 3 kids, is that right?
We do. Yes, I have two
Nice.
sons, uh, Lance and Kyle. They're in their early 40s, and my daughter Jade is 38. So again, they're not young; they're adults, and um, none of them are married at this particular time. But no grandkids. But we got plenty of dogs and plenty of relatives, and we're proud of them. They're all good kids.
Well, we are gone for the summer quite a bit as well, and then, gone for work. What were some of your strategies to stay connected with your wife or to basically stay connected with the kids? Because, I
Yeah,
mean, you're living in 2 different worlds almost, and that's very similar to
yeah.
us as well.
Well, think about this. This is going back. We didn't have cell phones back in those days.
Right.
We had calling cards and we called collect and we had phone booths and we did things like that. And we learned, we're going on the road, when you use a hotel operator and you call home and it's like 10 or 15 minutes, it's $100. You're like, wait a second. We got to figure out a better way. So that's where the calling cards came in and you used, some sort of service and the rates were a lot cheaper. And then, whatever. I forget when the cell phones and stuff came in, but again, we didn't have the computers. We basically had to just kind of go when we left. We try to get a hold of each other as much as we can, but that was just how life was back in those days. And
Right.
believe it or not, people are listening like, how did they do that? Well, just think
Yeah.
about well before my time, how they did it, and
Right.
things worked. You make do with what you have. I guess that's the best way to describe it. But
It's great.
again,
And
it's not easy, especially for a woman, with your husband on the road, doing that, going to cities, just, again. And I was dedicated. I mean, that was my job, and I enjoyed doing what I did, and I wanted to be good at it. And so that takes a toll, but it takes a strong woman to be able
oh, it
to do
has
what
to.
she did, to be able to, take the kids, not just wait around for me, at home, coming home after a ball game. She would take the initiative to take kids and take them on vacations and do different things, travel with three kids, young kids on
Yeah.
an airplane. We see kids on the airplane nowadays. You're kind of like, oh God, how did we do it? Well, she goes, you really didn't very often. It was me. And I go, yeah, you're right. You're right
You're
about
right
that.
about that.
Yeah.
Did you make it a point when you were home to say, "Okay, I'm gonna try to maximize the family time," knowing that
Oh,
your
oh,
summers are
oh, yeah.
yeah,
So the off
yeah,
season, again, when we started, a long time ago with this part of the conversation about the workouts, things like that. So in the off season, again, you can coordinate your schedule how you really want it. And my workout schedule I would take the kids to school, go work out, do a couple of errands, then be able to come back to pick them up, take them to their,
awesome.
ice skating, ice hockey when we were in Michigan, or basketball or football or whatever it was, and be a dad. So those 4 to 4.5 months that I was off, working out, always staying in shape, and able to be a father, and that was kind of my time to help out my wife to be able to, take care of business at least for a few months, but didn't
That's
really
very cool.
it wasn't, a really a fair, even Steven, but I did my best. But, that's just unfortunately how it was.
Oh, yeah, and it's a different time, right?
Yep,
And think about that now.
that
I
it
think
was. Mhm.
even with, our fire wives right now, it's not even Steven. They have to take the lion's share of things and have to become very self-sufficient because when we are gone and, the water heater breaks or something happens,
Yeah.
we're not coming back. We can't help. And so I think, I mean, it sounds very similar to
Well,
I
it
mean,
is
our
very
hats off
similar,
to those
Kevin.
ladies, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And so my hat's off again. We know how it is that when we're gone and, you go home, or, when you're on the road, and you're thinking about, man, I should be home. Um, but you can't have it both ways. So again, it bottom line is it takes a strong woman for sure.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing. Well, 47 years is nothing to sneeze at, and
Yeah, no,
I l
we're coming up to 50 here in a couple years, and so
unreal.
yeah, I mean, my God, life's been good, and again, I feel like I've lived a dream life. I mean, again, I graduated from high school, and 2 days later, I was in Bristol, Virginia, and
Let's
starting
go.
this, and I really haven't done anything. So, 50 years in professional baseball, that's the only thing I've done. I'm happy that the Tigers still include me, and I still have enough energy to, I feel like I have something to offer. They want me to be around. I'm happy to do it. Really, it keeps me young, to be honest with you,
Yeah,
on these young
absolutely.
kids. And so I hope I can continue to do this for, a few more years, to be honest with you, until I ride off into the sunset. But I still
Yep.
enjoy, again, being around the kids.
You obviously stay pretty busy, and I know you've been involved in teams, but was there an adjustment period with Barbara where right when you kind of officially retired in the beginning where you're like, all of a sudden he's home all the time?
Well, I mean, again, she's been with me all these years, and she kind of knows how, again, I'm wired. And so right after I retired, I mean, it was the time. I mean, we weren't doing very well. I was starting to get nicked up a little bit. I moved on, and again, I wanted to play with the Tigers my whole career, and I was able to do that. But I had set up, right after the season was over, I had asked them, I'd like to be a part, and I want to
Nice.
show you. I mean, oftentimes, again, the kind of so-called name players that have been with a team for a while, they're around, but they're only around here and there. I wanted to work, and so
Right.
that's just me. And so I think I proved to them early on that, I was, wanted me to travel. I was able to do that, with the blessing from my wife. And she knew that, I wasn't ready to just be at home. Again, I was, in my late 30s. I wasn't an old man
Right,
yet.
right,
So
right.
she know that I still needed to do, this. And so again, it was a blessing. And we're blessing how many years later, I'm still kind of doing it. But the job that I have, I'm in and out. I'm gone for a couple weeks. I come home for 10 days or so, and then I kind of do
Very
that for
cool.
6 or 7 months. So it's a pretty good gig. She does travel whenever she wants, go to some of the cities to be with me. But it's still, again, it's a pretty good gig. So you have to keep that down. But
Yeah, we'll
yeah,
keep it
again,
down. We'll keep it.
being in professional baseball all these years again, it's truly a blessing.
I love it. Were you I was thinking of it, Cecil Fielder, and I hadn't read that.
Yep.
I mean, he was just smashing the ball 550 feet or something like that. Was
Close.
there any
It's close.
overlap there?
No, no, I played. So
Yeah.
Sess came. He had went over. So his career, he had to go to Japan for a year. And so he was with the Toronto Blue Jays, and he was kind of a journeyman, not getting regular playing time. So the '89 season, he went over to Japan and put a monster year. The Tigers took a shot, and they gave him, I believe, a 3-year contract. So the first year he comes over in 1990, he hits 51 home runs,
Yeah.
which at that time hadn't been done in
Yeah.
quite a while. And so it was the last series, the last game of the season, the last series, we were in Yankee Stadium. And I was on first base when he hit his 50th home run, which
Wow.
was, I felt really good. And earlier that year, he had a ball out of Milwaukee County Stadium. I actually happened to be on first base. And then I don't know if it was the same year, but off of Dave Stewart, he hit a ball on the Tiger Stadium roof in left field, and I
So
actually
it's
was on
true.
base again. So
Yeah.
there's 3 times. So Sess for 3 years, man, he was really, really good. He was with us for a few more years, and then ended up get traded, I believe, to the Yankees in '96, the middle of the season, and he ended up winning a World Series ring with the Yankees in '96. But Big
Yeah.
Daddy, we called him Big Daddy,
Big
big
Daddy.
heart, had tremendous power, had a pretty good son too. Prince Fielder had a pretty good
Yeah, of
career.
course.
Unfortunately, got cut short by injuries. But Cecil Fielder was an excellent hitter, great power, and as big as he was a really good first baseman as well. So
Yeah.
he saved me a few times with some of the low throws every once in a while. He make you look good here and there, which good first basemen do.
I love it. Now, when I'm thinking back and when I'm growing up as a kid in the '80s, I you think of the Detroit Pistons. I actually got to meet
Yeah,
John Sally one
bad
time.
boy. Yeah,
Yeah, and he was, I mean, a complete wild man at the time. And I didn't know, obviously, there was an error around them about what they were doing. Was there any overlap in that Detroit area where you're
oh,
like, oh, we
sure,
got to stay away from
sure.
those
I,
guys?
I actually was friends with Bill Lambier, Joe
Oh,
Dumars, and
cool.
Isaiah Thomas. I bet basically the whole team because during the off season, Kirk Gibson and I split some tickets that we were on the floor there at the Palace. And the first 2 years, it was just this is how you'd like things to work out. They moved from the Silverdome where they were playing in a football stadium to the Palace. And the first 2 years there at the Palace, they won the World NBA championship two
Yeah,
years
right.
in a row. And they paid their dues. They lost to the Celtics. They had lost, to the Bulls, but they did have a nice little run for a while, and they were really good. I mean, they got
And
after you. And that was kind of like, yeah, this is a blue collar town, Detroit. We
yes.
are known for that, and that's how we try to play baseball. As far as fundamentally, team game, do whatever it takes to win. Well, that's exactly what Chuck Daly, their coach, who was a very good one himself, um, and the Pistons during that time, and led by Isaiah, but they had a lot of good role players, a lot of good players, and they had a lot of success as well.
That's cool. There's actually a recent documentary. It's called Burn about the fire service in Detroit currently. With maybe it was 10 years ago. They had so many vacancies post the factories leaving, and they had
Oh,
so many
sure,
just
yeah.
boarded up
Mhm.
that they had more structure fires than most in the country. And watching these guys go on one after another, uh, it's wild. So I didn't know like. I do think that it seemed like you guys kinda took on the personality of that, like, tougher blue collar Michigan t Detroit town, and it's a very cool thing.
Yeah, no, it did. And again, from baseball. So a kid from San Diego who was used to sunshine and warmth. And then I have to go back and play in Detroit where it's cold in April,
Freeze.
cold most of May. And then, late in the season, it's getting cold as well. And did I like it? Absolutely not. Sparky used to tell me, man, you're not very good at this. And I'm like, thinking back on my career, it's like, I had a couple decent, you know, first part of the year. But most of the time I didn't. I tried to just survive, but I learned. And, Gibby used to always give us that, you got to be tough because Gibby grew up in Detroit there and that tough guy. So I'd have to like, okay, well, I got to try to be that way. But it just kind of rubbed off on us. And then again,
Yeah.
now flipping over to like the bad boys and the way they just got after it, man. You didn't just get a free layup in there
No, not with
if
Lambeer.
you were going
No,
to pay the price. And again, that was just kind of the message that we're gonna come after you. That's what we felt again in baseball. It's a little, different sport, obviously. But again, we're
sure.
going to keep coming at you. You jump on us. We're not going to quit. We're not going to quit. We're going to play 9 innings, and that's just kind of how we were taught by Sparky. And again, I'm again, very thankful that he taught us the ropes that way. And again, I grew up, and I'm obviously great to grow up in San Diego and all that. But I enjoyed playing in Detroit. I really did. And you talked about the fires and the downtown area and how I'm happy to say that the rebuild, it's been going on now for quite a while, but
Cool.
people think about Detroit and they kind of go, "Ooh, we don't." But hey, it's come a long way and they've got a lot of good things going in there. It's a great state and the city of Detroit is definitely coming back.
That's awesome. Well, if somebody doesn't see you on this and they're not watching on the YouTube, you've stayed in great shape, and I want to know,
I
you
try.
obviously had,
I
yeah.
try.
So what are you doing as far as like nutrition or fitness, or
Yeah.
how you staying in great shape now? I know obviously
Well,
you did this for an entire career, but I do see some guys in our field, they put in 30 years of hard work and they kind of let themselves go and think that they earn their chair time. And I don't think that's right. I think we got to stay right. I mean, keep your healthy mind,
yeah.
healthy body.
Well, I think you just said it right there with the health. I think, it's always like if you stay in shape, you possibly could live a little bit longer. And that's just kind of my motto is like, well, I'd like to stay around for quite a while longer, to be honest with you. And, keeping your weight down is obviously at the top of the list on, things that you could do to help. And are there some sacrifice? I work out, basically 4 times a week, but in between there, I play golf and I'm just, I stay active and I have some energy. I know those days are weaning some, but
Yeah,
I've been able to keep my weight at almost at my playing weight at the end of my career,
it's
which
amazing.
again that's just again because of the activity that I've done, and
Now, when you're
I want to
working
try to
out, are you
continue.
doing weights, cardio, or kind of a mix of
Yeah,
both? What
no,
do you?
a mixture. I do. I had a hip replacement years ago, and so that limits me to I used to pound the concrete, running and things like that. I can't do that anymore. But there's so many things that you could do, and so my motto is something's better than nothing. And so
Mm,
whether it's upper body, lower body, intensity is not quite the same, but I do something, and I always do whenever I work out. It's always 30 minutes of some sort of cardio, and
that's
that's
great.
been my ticket.
Well, you said it earlier, and I think you were talking about consistency, and to me, I think that's everything. The compliance is the science, right? It's like you've been consistent in everything over years, and I think I would take consistency over intensity every day. It's just that consistency showing up, and
Yeah,
something is better than nothing. That's exactly it. I know, like some guys, I'll just say, I'm just going to break a sweat today. That's fantastic.
yeah. That's my motto. Again, it's worked for me. Again, I think having the energy. I thinking back, and I'm switching gears. I'm thinking back to high school when I was in basketball. And one of the things that I was good at is because I had the energy, I was always all over the court. And I used that to my advantage. I could see where guys would get tired and I still have a little bit left of the tank and, be able to do things, be disruptive and things like that. And that's kind of how we played basketball at that time. We were very disruptive, very active. And so that was right up my alley. And again, I took it over. As I mentioned earlier about a point guard playing shortstop. That's kind of how I viewed shortstop. Is my vision. I wasn't like this as a shortstop. I felt like even though I can't see the outfield behind me, kind of knew what was going on. And I guess I did that even when I was like a little boy. It was just something that I guess it was just meant to be, so to speak. Obviously, I did a few things to try to help myself, along with some very good coaching. That's obviously a part of it, but it was just something that I do believe that that was what I was meant to do when I was put on this earth.
It's amazing. Yeah, I think back, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. I think I was probably one of the last generations that we just played whatever sport was in season.
Yeah,
So if it was
exactly.
football in the fall,
Yeah,
it was, you know what I mean? Then it was basketball in the winter, and then you had spring stuff, and in the summer you're playing baseball, right? And so, but now you look at kids, and it seemed to be so sports specific. By the time they're 9 years old, they're only travel ball kids, and I don't know. I think that I don't know if that's right or wrong, or what your thoughts on are some of that
yeah,
stuff, like where you're just a baseball kid at 9 years
yeah.
old all of a sudden.
I wish it wasn't, but again, this is a different generation, and the things that we were able to do as youngsters, we could just take off and be gone all day. You can't do that anymore, unfortunately. That's just not how it works. And so we improvise. So they have a lot more at their fingertips, obviously the information, but we went out there on the street, at the school, whatever, and pick up basketball, street football, that kind
Sure.
of thing, just whatever it was to stay active. And that was very important about, and I look back, throwing a tennis ball or a rubber ball against my garage door and ruining my garage door. But thank God my parents, never really said anything. They allowed me to do that. But those are the little skills that helped me as I got, better, got into high school and then professional, that I was already doing at a very young age, that I was more fundamentally sound because of those
Mm,
things that I was doing, just because I was really killing time, but I enjoyed it. It was never work to me. It was something that I wanted to do. Um, and so again, being more organized with a uniform and all that, they have that more today. But I do about the catchy, the coaching that we had, and the being able to improvise. We didn't have to have nine guys in the field, because oftentimes we didn't, but we were able to play wiffle ball or tennis ball or said
sure.
rubber ball. We probably didn't even get to play that much hardball other than in our leagues, but we were able to play some sort of game that was making our minds work. And I know that that was very beneficial again to me in my career. Yes.
Yeah, again, it's a different, but I just see these kids, they got the sliding gloves on, they got a
Yeah.
$700 bat, they're like 9 years old, and you're like, it seems it's a wild time. I'm like, just go out and play over the line for a while, just like,
Yeah, although
yeah,
anything. Again,
yeah,
all those things are very helpful, and we were, I think, more creative. We started. Right field's closed if you're a right-handed hitter. Left field's closed if you're a left-handed hitter. If we didn't have, if we only had three or four guys, on a team, but we still would play, and we were still running the bases. We were still having to catch, throw guys out. Again, I look back and go, I didn't play, organized games like you play in these travel games, and they're playing, 60, 80, 100 games. But I'm hearing what you just described, it that some of these guys, when you look at them playing, it's like they still don't really know how to play the game. And it's like,
yeah,
I think that we learned how to play the game, even though we didn't have all the luxuries that they have. And I know I'm an
sure.
older guy, and I'm complaining and all that stuff, and every era is the best era. And I'm not going to deny that the athletes today are bigger, stronger, faster in all the sports. I give you that.
Well,
But we had
no,
a
I mean,
we had a
I'm
little we could play a little bit, and
yeah.
again, I enjoyed our era very much.
No, and I think of the influx of the international players that you see now, and there's these guys that are coming up from the Dominican Republic. They have
Yeah,
nothing, right? And they're
yeah,
using a stick
yeah.
and like a broken rock, and they're working on fundamentals. And I mean, it just seems like not everybody needs what some of these travel ball kids need now. I think
Oh man,
I don't.
I've been down to Dominican many times, and when you look at those kids, and you obviously could see why they want to get out of there. I know that's
Mm,
home and all, but the fields and things like that, and just the way that they have to live is tough, and that's why a lot of them make it, because they want to go, they want to come over to the States and get a better way of life, so to speak. And
yeah.
again, it's a great country, but unfortunately, some of the third world countries, it's a lot of it. It's the rich, and then there's poor, and there's really not much middle ground, middle class.
Now your work now with the teams, there's got to be this a complete internet. It's a completely international. It's America's pastime, but this is an
Yep.
international game. I think of our own Dodgers that I follow. They how many players from Japan are on there. I mean, they're all stars on there. But is it a different? Is there a different feel or a different approach if you have to work with a guy who's maybe that didn't grow up like you and I? And
No. Honestly, I've been asked this many times, and so again, the generations are different. But I'll tell you what, most of the kids they want to be coached. They really do. They
Mm,
want to get better. They want to learn. Obviously, there's more the computers, the phones, and all the more the style and the showmanship about all the professional sports. That's not going to change, whether I like it or not. Again, that
yeah.
wasn't what we did. I've moved on well from that. I mean, everybody's doing it, whatever.
Yeah, right.
They're good kids. And when I'm going in there and I'm talking to these kids, again, I haven't played in a long time. Some of our younger kids, whether it's myself or some of the other ex Tigers or ex professional ball players, they don't really know who they are. Um, if they don't know who I am, somebody will tell them and they'll figure it out real quick and go, uh oh,
Yeah.
this guy played a long time. Okay, I got it. Um, Maybe they should know a little bit more of the history. But again, I'm standing by. Most of these kids want to get better, and they do. And I love working with them. To be honest with you, you see the gleam in their eyes. That's what
Yeah.
makes me go. And you can just tell when they're sincere. And they have failure. Obviously, the game is, as we talked about, is a game of failure. And I can help get them through some of that, some of the stories that I could tell them and relate to them because again, it doesn't matter what era you were in, you struggled at one point in time in this beautiful game of baseball.
Oh, no doubt. All right. What's your thoughts on banana ball? That is,
Well,
I know some of the kids that were taking kids to this thing and they're
I
having
had
a
an
great.
opportunity to go. I just had come back into town. They were here in San Diego, and I did. But see, this is kind of the new generation of what they like. I mean, they want the quick. It's a quicker pace. And I'm a fan. I mean, again, you ask me what baseball, regular baseball, we make some rule changes here in baseball. I'm okay, especially the time clock. I'm fine with that. But I think that the Savannah Bananas are hit, and they're only. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the schedule for next year is it's almost sold out already in
Yeah.
multiple towns or different. They have like two different teams, two different levels. So, my hat's off to them because it gives me a big laugh when I watch those
Yeah.
guys perform.
Oh, they're
Yeah,
incredible. You've seen this guy do a backflip and while he's catching the ball
yeah,
is like unbelievable.
yeah. I give them a lot of credit. I don't know if Sparky would have liked that.
No, I don't
The
think
old
so.
school stuff.
No.
But I think again, I think that the kids nowadays they like it, and that's really all that matters.
Yeah, there's something really cool. We have the Lake Elsinore Storm. I'm up in Murrieta area, not far from you, but we have a minor league ball club in Elsinore, and there's something really
Right.
cool about going down there. Almost every game, when the kids get a ball, I mean, you're just getting the hot dogs, you got the popcorn, you got the Cracker Jacks, and it's a very cool small town feel, and it's very entertaining. And then obviously there's the big games. We'll go down to a Padres game or we'll go to a
Sure.
Dodger game, and that's a whole nother level. But it's
Exactly.
one of those things that you just can't help yourself feel American, but feel just very proud of like what you've done. And I can only imagine you being on that field, how much different that was.
Well, it's still where I'm most comfortable. Obviously, being at home with my family, but the next place would be on a baseball field. It just when I step on one, it just feels like that's me, and that's what I've been doing for so long, and that's where again I feel like that's a second home to me, and so again, I'm very, very blessed to be able to have done this for so many years. But again, it's a great game. Talking that even though here in the Padres are on the West Coast, the Dodgers back champs, they've got a darn good thing going. A lot of teams are jealous, including myself and the Tigers. We'd like to get there, but we're knocking on the door. We've got a
Yeah,
ball club coming up, and we're going to try it again here very soon. And spring training is around the corner right after the first of the year. So look forward to that challenge and just being a part. Again, I had my day in the sun, but I'm still a part of that the Tiger organization, and obviously pulling for those young men to have a successful season.
I love it. We're running out of time, and we missed Noel today. My partner Noel, he's another fireman that runs the swing with it. He's on vacation, but it's been a real honor, and I think I don't think people can literally grasp the fact of having a 20-year career at that level with the same team and having the success you had is just really unbelievable to me. But it sounds like what I'm picking up quite a bit is saying, "Hey, stick to the fundamentals and the consistency over time," and the camaraderie between you and Lou and some of the other guys, and how that almost fueled both of your careers. I think we can take quite a bit away from that, because I know there's guys that I work with that I hope to work with for 20 years as well. And they make me better. I know for sure that being around them make me better. And I think that's very similar to what you were kind of talking about.
No question about it, Kevin. It works hand in hand. And again, I'm tipping my hat to, again, all the men and women that have served in the country, yourself, the firefighters, and the policemen, and any other service that does the things that really are more meaningful. I mean, again, we live in the greatest country, and there's a
No doubt.
reason why. If people like yourself and that do their job, we gave fans obviously something to cheer about and get their mind off of really their day-to-day jobs or other things that maybe at particular times. So uh, we do our thing, but never don't mistake it. That's not nearly as important as what you do. So again, it's been a
Oh, I don't know. I
very
think
fun
sports
day.
get, I
I've
hope
enjoyed
sports never go
our
away.
conversation.
I think about that first pitch after 9/11.
Yeah,
I
I,
just, there's so many
that
things
was
that just
cool.
define an entire community, and to me, it's always revolved around sports. I think it's critical for our culture, for America. It's for, for
Yeah,
young men and women. I think
yep.
it's critical.
I'm with you on that. And 9/11, unfortunately, that was horrific. But the way we rebounded, and
Yeah.
as far as and the Boston, uh, the bombing there, and all the other
I
incidents that have happened, how we just seem to rally, and we'll continue. Uh, Hopefully, there won't be any, but I'm not going to be naive to think that the
yeah.
way this world works, that unfortunately, but nevertheless, man, this is a great country. Obviously, we're very fortunate that we are living in the best country in the world, and let's continue to do what we do and make it better.
Amen. Well, I can't thank you enough, Alan, for coming on, and it's been a pleasure. We go down to San Diego quite often. I bring the girls. We go down surfing and stuff. So I'll have to hit you up for lunch one of
Yeah,
these days in the off
absolutely.
season. That would be great.
Absolutely. You've got my number, and again, man, all the best. You did a great job, and so from the interviewer is actually makes this go because without the questions and just kind of your demeanor, it always makes it. I've done many of these over the years,
I'm sure.
but you did a nice job, and happy holidays, and again, happy New Year, Kevin.
Thanks so much, sir. I'll talk to you soon. And
Okay.
this has been the Fire You Carry podcast.